Hello everyone, welcome to the Books of Morgan. I'm Morgan and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book Freakout tag. So we're about 6 months into 2020. I can't believe it. This year has either felt like super slow for a lot of people or like super fast. For me, I feel like it's gone by so fast based on my reading. So in the year of 2020, I set my Goodreads goal to 100 books. It's the same goal that I give to all my years, so 2020 is no different. And at this moment, I am 45 books into that goal, so like I'm kind of on track, but also like 5 books behind, which isn't terrible. I feel like I can get that up. I'm pretty good about keeping to my goal. And I've read a lot of really great books this year. I've also read some not so great books this year, and I wanted to do this tag to give you a little bit insight into my reading for 2020 thus far. So I took a bunch of questions from various mid-year book freakout tags, so I kind of compiled it into my own to like answer questions that I wanted to answer. So some of these might be new questions that you've seen, or some of them might be old, but we're all getting to them. This is a very popular tag on YouTube, so I'm sure you've seen quite a few of these. But yeah, the first question I want to start off with is the most positive question, because I want to start this video off on a high note, and that is the best book I've read in 2020 so far. And this is going to go to Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. There has never been a book this year that made me do a 12-minute video book review on it. This is the only book that's done that to me this year. So yeah, I love it so much. I know this book is from 1994. I don't care. I read it this year in 2020, 30 years later, and I really don't care because I freaking love it so much. And if you don't know what this is about, this follows Claire and Jamie, and Claire is a nurse from the World War II era. It's like post-World War, and she's on a research trip with her husband and in Inverness, Scotland, and then she gets taken back into time in the 18th century of Scotland, where she meets Highlander Jamie Fraser, and there's a lot of romance, political intrigue, historical aspects that are just so on the nose from this time period that I'm like obsessed with this book. I mean, it's so well researched. The smut in here is 10 out of 10. I love this book, and I think everyone should read this book because it's freaking awesome, and I could just go on and on and on about this book because I loved it so much. So yes, Outlander by Diana Gabaldon is the best book of this year, and I still have to read the second one, I know, but I still have 6 months to do that. Actually, I have many years to do that, but yes, so good. Okay, the next one is the best sequel of 2020 so far. So I actually don't read a lot of series, so this one was pretty difficult for me. I don't read a bunch of sequels, and I tend to not like the sequels that I do read, and this is no different. So of the sequels that I've read, I would say the best for me was The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn series, so another older book. It wasn't published this year, so yeah. But I enjoyed this book. It was a good follow-up. There were some good aspects about it, and there were some bad things. So my favorite character was actually killed off in the first book, so I was a little salty about that, and I just really couldn't get over it. Also, multiple perspectives in this one were just not as interesting to me, so I think that was it. But it's a really good high fantasy novel. If you like epic fantasy books, the Mistborn series is definitely one that I would recommend. And it is a good book. It's well written. There's a lot more world building, and you get a lot of different backgrounds in here, and you get more insight into characters that we didn't see in the first book. And then the romance in this book is further developed, which I enjoyed. So this was the best sequel that I've read this year. Okay, the next book is a book that made me cry, and I don't cry in books. I get emotional over books, but I've never really full on cried about a book. I don't know why. There's been a few books that have seriously tears streaming down my face, but it's very rare. That happens once in a blue moon. So I'm going to show you a book that made me emotional and made me on the verge of tears, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I recently read this book. I actually read it this month and I adore this book. It was just so good. I know a lot of people are very divided on this, but the romance between Connell and Marianne is just so realistic and so just amazing. Like it's so like good and intellectual, and I just love the way that this book was written. And I know it's unique, they don't use quotation marks, so you don't really know who's speaking at first, but I got used to it really quickly, and I just absolutely loved this book. In the end, just made me feel like all the emotions. Like I loved it. It was so good. Yeah. And then I'm gonna talk about the biggest disappointment of 2020. This is like my least favorite part of doing book reviews, but there are books that are not good. I'm actually not going to show you a bad book. I'm going to tell you about a book that I read that I was just simply disappointed by, and I would show you like a physical copy of it, except I don't have it because I lent it to my cousin, and I also had an ebook version, so like I'm not going to show it to you, but I'm going to talk about it, and that is Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker. This is the sequel to The Simple Wild, which I loved and adored, and it came out last year in 2019. Like, The Simple Wild made like my top 10 books of the year in 2019, so I was really looking forward to Wild at Heart, which is the follow-up novel of that. And here's the thing, I think The Simple Wild ended in a good place. Like, we didn't need a sequel. So this sequel just kind of prolonged some issues that I thought were resolved in the first book, and it made me angry at Calla, who is the main character. I feel like she developed so much as a character in the first book, and it was like the second book was a character regression, and I just was so annoyed by that. And I actually gave the book like 4 out of 5 stars because it's not a bad book, and I read it in like one night. So, I mean, I got through it and I wanted to see what happened to Calla and Jonah, and I care about those characters. And I think there's going to be a third book coming out, and I'm just like, no. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't need another one. Like, I feel like their issues have been resolved, so why do these books keep coming out? I don't get it. I don't get it. So, that's my biggest disappointment is Wild at Heart. It's not a bad book. It's just, I was so annoyed that things were happening in this book that I thought were resolved in the first book, and I just didn't think it lived up to the amazingness of the first one. So that is my biggest disappointment. And then I'm going to talk about the most beautiful book that I've bought this year, and it's a book that I have not read. It's still on my shelf, but I got Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This is a nonfiction memoir. I mean, just look at this cover. It's so gorgeous. Like, the sparkles, the paint, and the colors. It's so pretty. I don't even care if I don't like this book because I just think it's so beautiful. Like, I'm obsessed with how beautiful it is. I've seen a lot of people showing like illustrated covers, and I think those are really beautiful too, but I just like love the colors of this. Like, I want to reach in and like touch it, and like I want a shirt that looks like this. I don't know, like I really love this cover. It's so pretty to me, and I love sparkles and pink, so how could I resist? Now I'm going to talk about the most anticipated release of the second half of 2020. So I don't really keep up with what's coming out and what I should be keeping my eye on. I feel like I'm always late to books. I'm always like 10 months behind everyone else, or like 30 years behind everyone else with Outlander. But I'll get there eventually. I'm just not really on board with new releases. Like, I don't know. I don't even read ARCs, like, because I know I'm not gonna finish them. However, there is one book that is on my radar that is coming out, I believe, in September, and that is Well Played by Jen DeLuca. This is Well Met because I don't have Well Played, but it is the companion novel to this first book that followed Emily and Simon, who met at a Renaissance fair, and it was enemies to lovers and blah 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 blah, and it's amazing, and I love this book so much, and I again adored it. So the companion novel follows different characters from this first book, so I think I'm gonna reread this in August and then read Well Played so that it's like fresh in my mind. But I'm really excited for Well Played because I again adored this book. It only has 3.89 like average rating on Goodreads, and I don't understand that because it's freaking awesome. So yeah, please go read this book if you're into Renaissance fairs and enemies to lovers tropes and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm so excited for this companion novel to come out. And then, speaking of books that I just loved and adored, the next prompt is who is your newest fictional crush? And I feel like I don't have a lot of book boyfriends. Like, I feel like a lot of men in books could be very medium, or I just have no feelings about them. I'm just like, I don't really get the appeal. But there is one man who has stolen my heart, who has captured it, who has my number one love. I mean, that person is Jamie Fraser from Outlander. I love Jamie Fraser. I think he's awesome, and he speaks the way that oh my gosh, like I love Jamie Fraser so much. Like, I adore him. And what's funny about that is, like, after I read this book, I was like, Jamie Fraser is like the one. That is going to be the man that I'm going to compare everyone else to. I don't care. Literally 2 months after I read this book, I met a guy who looked like Sam Heughan, and that's the first thing I said to him. I was like, hey, you look like Sam Heughan a bit. Maybe Jamie Fraser if you've seen Outlander. Now he's my boyfriend. So this really manifested physically, this crush, into my current boyfriend, and I'm so happy about that. Because who doesn't want a guy who looks like a Scottish Highlander to be their boyfriend? So I feel like I really won the lottery here, because oh my gosh, whenever does your fictional crush become your real crush? Like, that's just mind-blowing. So hot. And yes, I know I'm very lucky to be dating someone so hot. Like, we don't need to talk about it. So this last prompt are books that I need to read by the end of 2020. So like I said at the beginning, my Goodreads goal is 100 books. So I need to read 55 more books by the end of the year. But there are certain books that I know I have to read. Like I have to. Like, there's no excuse not to. And those books are, first one, I have 2 that I need to read. Like, absolutely. Because, I mean, if I don't read these books, then I should just delete my social media and all my YouTube stuff. But I really need to read Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I know this book is super old. I know everybody loves this book. But I finished the Grisha trilogy last year. Didn't like it. So I'm like weary of going into this book, even though I've heard it's way better. And I know it's still like the Grishaverse. So I need to get to this one. I know I haven't. I will at some point. It is actually a book that came out this year, and that is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I read all of Sarah J. Maas's other books, so why haven't I read this one? Well, you know what? I'm just not motivated to read this 800-page book with medium writing in it. Like, I know she's not a great writer, but I continue to read her books. They're so addictive. It's just, I'm not motivated to read this. Like, it's 800 pages. I know her writing style. I know what to expect. I don't know. I don't know why I haven't read this book. It's been sitting on my shelf, and people keep asking me my opinion on it, and I don't have one because I haven't read it. So I literally just want to read this book so I can have an opinion on it, and then I can talk about it with other people. Like, that's the only reason I need to read this book by the end of the year. So, yeah. So this was my mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you so much for watching. I know I have a lot of reading to do in the next 6 months, so stay tuned for all those reviews. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more from me, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!